Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about split testing, which is something that sounds like a very technical term that you wouldn't need to know, right? But even if you don't own a business yet and you're just even barely thinking about the possibility of starting a business, I would highly recommend learning what split testing means and why it's important. And that's really what we're going to do in this video. I'm going to keep this one kind of short, but a lot of people, what we do, if you really think about it on a conceptual level, is we take bets based on guesses, sometimes total guesses. And even though it's not a financial bet where we're not saying like, okay, I bet you 20 bucks I'm going to do this by this date. In some cases, in many cases, we're betting our time, right? Because we're putting our energy and our time, our focus, whatever, into a certain pursuit or a certain dream or whatever. And we're basically doing it based on guesses. We don't really have any data or anything like that to prove that the angle we're going, the decisions we're making are the right ones. This is particularly true with small businesses. I coach some small business owners and I see this all the time where we make decisions based on, we make decisions for hiring, for firing, for financing, capitalization of our growth efforts, for all these different things that we're trying to do as a business owner. And we do it based on emotional estimation, really guesses, feelings. And that's really a bad thing to base many of our decisions on, particularly in business, because feelings are fickle and a lot of times they are wrong. So what I want to talk to you today about is the concept of split testing. Many of you probably already know what this is, but I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how it works and also just explain the concept in general. And basically how it works, by the way, this is often called A/B testing as well, is you always have like a control, right? Which is what things are like right now. So let's think about it in terms of like a website, right? There's a certain layout where, let's say, the logo's at the top left, or let's use a more practical one. Let's say the phone number is at the top left of the screen, right? So you have a website where the phone number is here, and this is A. That's your control, right? And then you have, let's put a little plus sign there. You have B, and let's say you go, okay, I'm getting 5% conversion rate, meaning like, 5% of people who come to my website call that phone number in the top left. I'm getting 5% conversion right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, okay, I'd really like to have a higher conversion rate than 5%. I'd like for maybe 7 or 8% of people who come to my website to call my phone number. That would result in so much more business, right? So what we do is we go, you know what? I'm going to test putting the phone number on the top right. So instead of having it on the top left, you move it to the top right. And this is your variation. This is the control, this is the variation. Now, the important thing to remember when you do tests like this, if you've ever done science experiments in school or anything like that, is that you don't want to change more than one variable at a time, because otherwise, let's say I move the phone number up here, but I also put 3 photos at the top, and those photos weren't there before. That we could draw a big X over, because now, let's say that our conversion goes up from 5% to 7%. Do I know whether or not it was the phone number that I put on the top right, or was it the photos that I put at the top too? We don't know which one caused the increase in conversion rate. So now, who knows what we should do, right? Or who knows even what worked? Or what to do more of or what to do less of? We don't know anything unless we isolate the variable. So you want to only change one thing at a time. So in this case, we would put the phone number up on the top right instead of the top left. And then you test it, right? Now, what a lot of times you can do in situations like this, there are softwares and things like that that can help you actually test them at the same time. So they'll show, like in terms of like Google AdWords ads, it'll show this ad to one person and this ad to the next person, this ad to the next person, this ad to the next person. That way you can evenly compare. But in situations like this, what oftentimes people do is they'll leave this page up. This is the page they've always had. They'll take this page down and put this page up for a period of like 30 days. And then they'll compare the numbers. Did our conversion statistics go up or not? And let's say after 30 days, we get really fortunate results and our conversion rate is now 10%, right? At that point, we go, wow, moving the phone number from the left side over to the right side increased our conversion by 5%. It literally doubled it. So now I'm going to get rid of this one, right? And I'm going to say, okay, now this is my control group. And now maybe I'll go, okay, now let's test. Now this is A. So now is when I could go, okay, now we've got this one that's over on the top right. Let's test moving 3 photos to the top that were currently at the bottom. And we're maybe using guesses for that, right? Like, oh, before there was a lot of text at the top. Maybe that was kind of boring. Some people, maybe people kind of get bogged down in the text and they end up leaving the page. What if there were some very attractive photos near the top that drew them in a little bit more, captured their attention? So it's kind of our guess, right? But we don't know if it's going to work. That's emotional estimation. That's just making decisions on feeling. We want to get actual data to see if this is going to work. So now this is the A, the control, and this is B, the variation. And we run the test again. And what we find this time is after 30 days, it's 8%. Okay. So now we know we don't want, since the variation didn't win, we want to stick with the control, right? Because maybe there's something about, we don't really know why the photos maybe didn't work out, but they didn't. So it could be that, something about the photos makes people think that they're at a site that offers a product or service that's not what they were looking for. So it could just be the wrong photos, right? But either way, we know the photos there are not good. So we go back to the control, and maybe this time we try 3 different photos. So you see what I'm saying? This is kind of how you do the whole, I'll just leave that up there for now, but this is how you do the whole split testing process. Now, the reason really that why, again, this is so important is because in business, you want to make data-driven decisions. And as I mentioned before, this is a concept that I first learned from a man named Eben Pagan, who's a very successful online entrepreneur. And he really it talks in a lot of his trainings about data-driven decision-making versus emotional estimation. And that is so, so, so important if you want to be an entrepreneur, because just doing this one thing alone is going to set you apart way above and beyond most of your competition. Most people are not doing this. Most even successful business owners, to some extent, are not making as many data-driven decisions as they could be. So if you learn how to split test, you can go potentially a lot further than a lot of other people would go, and you have an instant advantage over your competition, and you avoid a lot of painful mistakes. Mistakes that without doing split testing or other data sort of comparison techniques, you would never even know why you were failing or why you were succeeding, right? So the point is to figure out what works so you can do more of it, figure out what doesn't work so you can do less of it. Split testing is a great way to make that happen. So I'm going to leave you with a couple of examples of ways that people have split tested or companies have split tested in real life that really worked out. The first one is Tim Ferriss, if you've ever heard of him, which I'm sure you have. His first book was The 4-Hour Workweek. And what he did, a lot of people don't realize this, but what he did to choose, what he did to choose that title for the book, The 4-Hour Workweek, was he split tested Google AdWords ads. So you've seen, obviously, if you don't know what Google AdWords ads, you Google anything and you get those sponsored listings at the top and down the side. Everybody says they don't click on them, but billions probably are spent each year clicking on them. So you probably do, whether you realize it or not. I probably do, whether I realize it or not. And what he essentially did was he basically created 2 or 3 different ads, and there may be even a lot more than that. And what he did is he split tested the ads, and he would change like just the title. And he would change maybe one word in the title, and then he would change the whole title. But either way, he kept split testing different titles against each other and measuring how many people clicked on the ad for each type of headline that he swapped out. And he kept split testing control versus variation, which one wins, control versus variation, which one wins, until he got to the point where one of them had an extremely high click-through rate, which was The 4-Hour Workweek. That's how he knew what title he wanted to choose for his book that would get it picked more often off the, bookshelves at Barnes & Noble or whatever else. Really a genius use of the split testing method to make a business decision. Another example is of Sony. And Sony A/B tested, they split tested different variations of the layout of their checkout page. Now this is crazy. Like, you wouldn't think that just the layout of the checkout page on their website would be enough to influence how many people would actually buy products. You'd think that by the time people add it to the checkout or add it to the cart, they've probably already decided to buy it, so the layout's not going to make much difference or whatever. If it looks fancy, it looks cheap. You think people are just going to buy the product if they're at that point, but Sony found out that wasn't true. Just by changing the layout of their checkout page, they increased, making sure my notes are correct here, yeah, they increased sales by 20% just by changing the layout of their checkout page. If they had just been guessing how to increase sales, I promise you that the layout of the checkout page probably would not have been on their list of the top 100 things they could try changing in order to increase sales. But because they decided to use split testing and they were applying that technique to a whole bunch of different things on their website as a test, they found out that when they compared this layout to this layout, their sales went up literally 20%. So this is something that a lot of very large companies do, a lot of sophisticated companies do, but you don't have to be an extremely sophisticated billion-dollar company to do split testing. In fact, you can start right now. So if you're in a position where you still have a day-to-day job, if you already have a company that you're running full-time, whichever, I encourage you to try split testing and think about ways that you can make data-driven decisions and reduce the number of decisions that you're making based on feeling using techniques like a split test. So leave a comment below. As usual, I'd love to hear from you and get feedback from you on this topic. But either way, put it into action, and I hope you get lots of value out of it. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.